In Japan, there lives an old man. You may have heard of him. His name is Shigeru Miyamoto. Though he's notable for creating some of Nintendo's biggest franchises with the likes of Mario and Zelda, there's a passion project of his that slipped under many radars for a long time. That series is none other than Pikmin, a real-time strategy series that began on the GameCube. It may not be F-Zero or Chibi Robo levels of obscure or forgotten, but it's never really been a heavy hitter like, say, Mario. Of course, that doesn't mean the games are bad or unsuccessful. Far from it. While the series took until the Switch to have a game break 2 million sales, releasing on poorly selling systems might have been the root of that issue. These games are immensely well regarded. Even though it took 9 years after 2 for 3 to come out, and 10 years after 3 for 4, people love these games, and for good reason. They're fun, charming, atmospheric, addicting, and extremely hellish. Much like what happened with Metroid Dread, the reveal of Pikmin 4 convinced me to make my way through the series to prepare. Now that I am officially a Pikmin fan, and because my Zelda ranking isn't due till later this year, I thought it would be fun to make a video talking about the franchise. Not in the form of a ranking, however, there just aren't nearly enough entries to keep a ranking engaging. Instead, I'm gonna review each game in release order. Let's start from the very beginning.
Steve? Steve's a trooper? Oh my god!
The original Pikmin released in 2001 as one of the first ever games on the GameCube. You play as Captain Olimar, a Hokotachian stranded on an uncharted planet light years away from his home. If he fails to put his ship back together in 30 days, he will die and his wife and kids will never see him again. He seeks the help of a struggling species which he names Pikmin to find his ship's 30 parts and get back home. It's a simple premise, but it does an excellent job at motivating you to find all the pieces. It may seem stressful, and it kind of is, but there's an equal number of parts and days. If you get at least 1 part per day, you're good to go. Of course, you won't be able to get those parts, or do anything really, without the help of the titular Pikmin. There are 3 types of Pikmin with different attributes. Red Pikmin can attack fast and are immune to fire. Blue Pikmin can move through water. And yellow Pikmin can be thrown high and carry bomb rocks. Yeah, yellows couldn't conduct electricity till 2, so they're kinda situational in this game. Each type is better suited for different objectives than the others, so you really need to divide up your labor. You could have Pikmin fight enemies, build bridges and break walls to open paths, return ship parts, or carry pellets and corpses back to the onions to make more Pikmin, all at the same time. The better you are at dividing labor and keeping numbers up, the quicker you'll get work done and fix the dolphin. You could either scout the area for parts, raise your Pikmin numbers, defeat enemies and open paths, or try to do everything at once. Seriously, I've seen speedruns of this game where people have gotten everything in an area in a single day. Not to mention, the areas you go to in this game are gorgeous, on top of being fun to explore. They present such a vivid, natural vibe, even despite the dangerous predators and taking limit, and the mellow soundtrack aids that feeling. Because this game is so short and not that linear, it's very replayable. After you beat the game, or even if you fail and don't get the best ending, you can start over with the knowledge you gained from that last playthrough. The more times you play this game, the smarter you get, and the faster your clear time gets. Tracking your improvement with certain games is usually satisfying, but it especially applies to this game given how it's designed. With all the praise I've given this game, you're probably thinking, does it even do anything wrong? Well, for one, it's kind of glitchy. There's nothing outright game-breaking, but sometimes ship parts will become unobtainable by getting stuck or falling over, forcing a reset. And sometimes Pikmin will die by stupid means. Speaking of which, the Pikmin AI is wonky. Sometimes they'll just stop following you and stand out in the open, or ignore your whistle and likely die because of it. Selecting which Pikmin type to throw is clunky and annoying since there's no concrete way to choose one, forcing you to swarm them around or dismiss them into groups. Also, Wollywogs have way too much HP. I'm glad they trimmed them down in later games. Despite some issues, Pikmin 1 is a relaxing yet enthralling experience that encourages quick thinking and tight strategy. It's one of the GameCube's most underappreciated games, and I'm glad it's been getting more attention as of late. I give this game an 8 out of 10. Now it's time to take a look at Olimar's next ordeal.
I just had to open my mouth!
Pikmin 2 released in 2004, also on the GameCube. This one's a little more divisive among the community. Some people adore it and see it as the best game in the series, while others don't care for it and feel like it doesn't understand what made the original game so great. And honestly, I'm kind of on the negative side. That's not to say Pikmin 2 is bad, far from it. It actually gets quite a few things right, some of which even better than the first. The Pikmin AI, for one, is a lot more responsive, so it's less annoying to command your group. It's also significantly less glitchy than the first game. The big thing 2 has over 1 is a second playable captain in the form of Louie, the true villain of this series. With 2 captains at your disposal, it's now even more intuitive to multitask and divide labor. Pretty much every positive thing about Pikmin 1's overworld exploration also applies here. It's a lot of fun wandering around these beautiful environments looking for treasure and growing more Pikmin. I honestly don't even mind that most of the areas are reused from the first game, since they still do enough interesting things with them to keep things fresh. However, I very much take issue with a possible reason why they didn't spend time designing new areas. Because you don't spend a lot of time on the surface. You spend most of your time in this game underground in caves. And to be honest, I really don't like the caves in Pikmin 2. Let's start out with a big problem I have with the caves. Time doesn't pass. For a game in a series centered around time management, that's an issue. Freezing the time not only makes no logical sense in universe, but it also forgets a lot about what made the first game work so well. This problem kind of extends to the rest of the game, thanks to the lack of a day limit. In the first game, you only had 30 days to find all the ship parts before Olimar's life support runs out. In 2, you can take as long as you need to repay Hocotate for its debt. I understand that some people have been intimidated by the first game's time limit, but there are better ways to mitigate it than removing it entirely. Back to the caves, the freezing of time grinds the game's pace to a screeching halt, even though they let you save in between floors. They're also visually and mechanically dull and repetitive. If you showed me a clip or screenshot of a cave, I could not, for the life of me, tell which one it comes from. They don't even have many unique hazards or mechanics to help them stand out. There are some exceptions, like the bread bugs and the submerged castle's infamous water wraith, but they're few and far between. Not to mention, the caves are full of cheap tricks like death pits, insta-kill electricity, enemies that can snipe your Pikmin from a distance, and sudden falling boulders and bomb rocks that can instantly wipe out massive groups of Pikmin at once. As you may expect, coming across these without warning is not fun. You may have noticed that I have yet to talk about the actual level design of these caves, and that's because there is no level design, as the caves are all randomly generated like dungeons in a Mega 10 game. As such, exploring them doesn't feel rewarding since everything is thrown together by an AI without any coherent thought. Now, what else should I talk about? Oh yeah, there's new Pikmin found only underground. One is the white Pikmin. They move fast, they can detect buried treasure, and they're immune to poison. They're pretty balanced, unlike the purple Pikmin. A single one of these bad boys has a strength of 10 regular Pikmin. Not only can they carry heavier objects with fewer numbers, but they also wipe the floor with most enemies. Throwing a purple makes it do a stomp attack, which not only damages enemies, but also has a decent chance to stun them. Throwing multiple purples at once can stun lock enemies, and before you know it, you've won the fight before it's even started. Basically, purples trivialize 90% of all combat encounters in this game. Having most of the game take place in seedy, dark caves with uninspired, unfair design, and Pikmin that might as well be win buttons makes the entire game feel really repetitive. By the time I repaid the debt, I pretty much got the gist of the game and had no desire to play any further. I know there's a 4th area with a true final dungeon and boss, but you'd have to pay me to play that. Like I said, Pikmin 2 isn't a bad game, but it's vastly inferior to the rest of the series in so many ways. And I'd honestly much rather watch people rage at this game online, because it can actually be pretty funny in that regard. I give this game a very shaky 6 out of 10. Alright, now we're on to the real good stuff. After the release of Pikmin 2, fans had to wait 9 whopping years for the next game. Pikmin 3 was originally in development for the Wii, but it was in the works for so long that it ended up releasing on the Wii U in 2013. And did that work pay off? Yes. Absolutely. Pikmin 3 might just be my favorite game in the series, and one of my favorites on the Wii U. This game returns to the survival-based format of the first game, rather than sticking with the dungeon crawling of the second. As someone who personally didn't like the caves in 2, this pleases me. It helps that the Pikmin AI is nearly flawless now. They are very loyal and responsive, and almost never ignore your commands. If they're in the middle of a task, they need to be whistled twice to be called over, preventing the accidental halting of tasks. Also, what's better than 2 captains? 3 captains. Instead of Olimar, you play as Alf, Brittany, and Charlie, 3 explorers looking to save their planet from starvation. You don't get access to all 3 of them right off the bat, but it doesn't take too long for them to reunite. And once you do, man does this game get strategic. Having 3 captains already lets you divide up labor even more. But in this game, captains can throw each other, opening the doors for some creative puzzles that require you to think outside the box. Also, using the pause menu, you can direct captains to move to certain locations, so you don't have to waste time moving one captain while while the other two stand around and do nothing. It's a massive time saver, and time is something you need in this game because the day limit is back, albeit a little different from Pikmin 1. That game would always end once you surpass day 30. This game ends once you run out of juice, which you can get more of by collecting fruit, this game's main collectible. This is a much better way of reducing stress of a time limit than removing it entirely, as it encourages you to gather as much fruit as possible to keep the limit as far away as possible. The other thing they did to reduce the stress was the introduction of marked objectives. I know some people may be put off by this because ew, linearity, but I honestly don't mind it. It helps me stay focused on the task without having me panic and resort to YouTube guides. Although, there is one big issue I do have with it. You have to follow these objectives to unlock all the Pikmin types, ending with the blue Pikmin, which you find a little late into the game. As such, the game doesn't truly open up until just as you're about to unlock the final area, which is a bit annoying. That's really the only big complaint I have with this game, because as I've implied, the rest is phenomenal. Just like with Pikmin 2, in addition to reds, yellows, and blues, there are two brand new Pikmin types. One is the Rock Pikmin. On top of being able to destroy glass and crystals, rocks deal instant damage to enemies when thrown, at the cost of not being able to latch onto anything. Basically, they're purples if they were balanced. The other new type is the Winged Pikmin. Since they can fly, they are completely unaffected by ground terrain, making them ideal for carrying stuff back to base. If you're wondering where purples and whites are, they've been relegated to mission mode, and purples kinda got nerfed to hell and back anyway. The main areas are as visually gorgeous as they are cleverly designed and fun to explore. Figuring out how to get around and gather every last piece of fruit is immensely satisfying and rewarding. Taking down enemies is more fun than ever thanks to a functional whistle and the introduction of charging, which is way more fun to use than swarming, fight me. This is especially true with the game's excellent boss lineup, which really tests your skills with the core combat mechanics and each Pikmin type. All this culminates with an outstanding final area, which I'd rather not spoil for you, because this entry's gone on for long enough anyway. Just know that Pikmin 3 is peak, man. It takes everything that made the first game work so well, streamlines it, and adds so much more flair to make it as fun as it could possibly be. 9 out of 10, please play it.
Funny doggy.
Pikmin 4 has been in the works for a long time. Seriously, there are articles of Miyamoto claiming the game to be almost done that date back to 2015. Now that the game finally released on the Nintendo Switch last month, a full decade after Pikmin 3, I can safely say that man does that long dev time show. Reason number 1, this game has a fidget spinner. When's the last time you saw one of those? And reason number 2, it's really friggin' good. This is easily the biggest Pikmin game to date. The areas are much larger in this game, with so many things to find. Exploring these vast landscapes is not only fun, but it really makes you feel like a tiny traveler in an overgrown, uncharted world. Also, to make up for the areas being so big, you can move your base between multiple points on the map, which is pretty convenient. Also, the world above isn't the only place open to exploration, because the caves from Pikmin 2 are back. And they don't suck. Granted, I still have a few issues with them, namely their often dull visuals and how much they kill the pace of this game. But since they're no longer randomly generated, they're much more satisfying to solve. And they use the game's mechanics and all the Pikmin types very well. It's almost like it's better to rely on smart, passionate human artists rather than an algorithm. Isn't that right, Hollywood? About the Pikmin, all 7 main types are back, now with a new type called Ice Pikmin, which can freeze water and most enemies. More importantly, joining you on your mission is the lovable rescue pup, Ochi. Doubling as a second captain, Ochi can charge through obstacles, carry Pikmin across water and small ledges, and carry objects with the strength of multiple Pikmin. You can also upgrade his abilities to make him stronger, and command him to do certain tasks while you're not controlling him. For the first time in the series, you can venture out at nightfall. The enemies get very aggressive at night, but thankfully, you have the nocturnal glow Pikmin with you. Your entire group instantly warps to the current captain after finishing a task, which is very convenient, and their glow mob attack is super effective against bigger enemies. Honestly, I kind of expected more from the night expeditions than glorified defense missions, but they're still a lot of fun, and there's already enough exploration during the day and in caves, so I can live with it. This game also has many more unique features, such as an upgrade system, side quests, Dandori battles and challenges that really test your skills, and the ability to rewind time, which isn't quite as broken as I thought it would be. Running on Unreal Engine 4, this game looks stunning. It's easily one of the best looking Nintendo games ever made. To some sum it all up, Pikmin 4 is a lot like Super Mario Odyssey. Not only because it followed a massive Zelda game, but because it's such a big game full of collectibles that only truly begins once the main quest ends. Granted, it's not as good as Super Mario Odyssey, at least in my opinion, but it has just as much passion put into it, and it's still a ton of fun. Pikmin 4 is by no means a perfect game. The tutorial's a little long, the day count is basically meaningless like in 2, the auto-lock is really annoying and I wish you could turn it off, and you can only have up to 3 Pikmin types out at a time, when 4 or 5 would have been a fine enough cap. But that does little to hinder my overall amazing experience with Pikmin 4. I currently hold this game at an 8 out of 10, though I could bump it up to a 9 at some point in the future. I still prefer 3 for feeling just a bit more streamlined, and because I generally prefer the survival-based format of Pikmin over the dungeon crawling, but Pikmin 4 is great as well, and I highly recommend it whether you're a fan of this series or not. So yeah, this is a pretty good series. 3 out of the 4 main entries are gems, and even the one that isn't can still be enjoyable. Obviously, these 4 games don't make up the entire franchise. There's Pikmin Adventure, a minigame in Nintendo Land, a pack-in title for the Wii U. I played a little bit of this years ago when I first got my Wii U, and I remember it being decently fun. There's also Pikmin Bloom, a mobile app which is more of a walking tool than an actual game. It's basically the Pikmin equivalent to Pokemon Go, but it's about Pikmin rather than Pokemon, so it's better. And there's Hey Pikmin on 3DS, but I'm not touching that game with a 40-foot pole. Anyway, Pikmin is one of Nintendo's most underappreciated series, and I am super glad to see more people get into it as of late. If you're interested in the series, all 4 main entries are available on the Switch right now, so give them a shot. Anyway, this has been Platy, and I would make a joke about having to wait until 2033 for Pikmin 5, but Pikmin 4 has been selling really well, so it might come a little sooner than that at this rate.